So without further ado, we'll have this awesome little chat here where it'll be a free-flowing conversation. If you want to say something, just let me know here in the voice hangout chat. Just kind of tag me and say, hey, I got a question, and I can go over to you. But we'll just be having like a nice little conversation between Esren and myself to discuss the merge, the scary merge. The merge sounds like a novel from what's his name, The Shining. I can't think of his name right now. Shit.
Stephen King.
Yeah, it sounds like a Stephen King novel, doesn't it? The merge.
Well, you've got more exciting stuff to wait for as well, because then you've got the sequel, The Surge, and then the Verge, and then the Purge, and then the Splurge. Those are all coming. Just over the next 2 days, we've got the merge.
Well, just like a Stephen King novel, there's a lot of fears, probably not even needed, as we've discussed a little bit earlier, in what's coming up. So just quickly, a quick overview, Esren, if you could just let us know, what are we in store for here with the merge?
Yeah, so it's probably one of the biggest upgrades to a blockchain that we've seen up to now, especially a popular blockchain. And essentially, we're changing the consensus layer, which is the way that the chain decides which blocks are being created. So normally that was done through proof of work, which meant that you've got all these miners, and then the first one to solve the problem announces that, and then they mint the next block. So that's why we've seen like tons of GPU miners and farms all over the place doing this, and that is now going to be changing to proof of stake, which means that we move away from the power-hungry GPUs with and move into having validators. And the difference there is that the validators are basically putting a certain amount of money up front, 32 ETH minimum in this case, and they're then asked to basically decide, they say, yep, I'm here and I'm going to say that this block should be the way it is, and if they are either unavailable or they are doing something by broadcasting an incorrect state, then they can basically be slashed, so they lose some of that staked ETH. And that is essentially the biggest change. There's also going to be a lot of other behind the scenes things which set the network up to be improved again down the line. So yeah, in terms of what we'll see very little as traders. The biggest difference will be happening kind of behind the scenes.
Excellent. Well, one thing I've heard people say is, can't wait for the merge to happen. This has been happening all year. Can't wait for the merge to happen so gas prices will go down. Go ahead and kill our hopes there.
The actual amount of transactions that can be processed in each block is not changing. It's changing from 12 seconds to 13 seconds, but the actual throughput of like the amount of transactions is only going to be like an extra 10%, so you will see very little difference. So therefore gas will make, you're not going to be paying anything cheaper really.
Okay, and then in terms of some more fears that I've seen here is that a lot of projects have been coming out saying that, hey, we are only adopting the consensus chain, the proof of stake chain as our main chain here. And I know there are a lot of rabble rousers out there in this world, and a lot of people who take advantage, grifters. Is there any fears or any possible chance that a movement can happen where NFTs that live on this past chain could be considered the V1s, so to speak, of this? Is that anything that could possibly happen?
Not no. I mean, in my opinion, no, because I mean, even all the exchanges, a lot of the NFT projects themselves, and pretty much everyone apart from the miners are basically all for this, and they've come out publicly and basically said we are only going to recognise the proof of stake chain. So the miners are kind of holding on, and we had a chat about this earlier with Sola, and we were basically saying, this proof of work chain is going to probably exist, but it's just going to be a bit of a meme chain in the same way as Ethereum Classic and those sort of things, where they do hold a minor value, but it's you're probably going to ignore it, to be honest.
I think some people refer to ETH Classic as a zombie.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, that was something happened with my mic. Okay, so can you explain to us a little bit about like where the ETH supply will live in all of this?
Yeah, so we do have this concept now of having a beacon chain as well as the main chain that we use every day. The beacon chain is where all the ETH relating to the validators is going to live. I forget the value. I've not checked the value of how much is sitting on that beacon chain now, but there is a large amount of ETH on there already, which is really positive because that means that we've got tons of validators already set up in the space. A lot of them probably set that up, a year ago. And that's how long this has kind of been going around. And so for each validator node, they would have had to stake 32 ETH on the beacon chain to become a validator. And yeah, one of the quite interesting things about the beacon chain, and one of the negative parts of this is that it's great having tons of validators, but one of the downsides is that if they're all using the same like Geth client, which is the software that the validators will run, then you end up with a bit of a concern where, imagine everyone's using MetaMask and then suddenly MetaMask has a bug and everyone who uses MetaMask is now offline or has a problem. It's the same in the Geth clients as well. So one of the things they're trying to do is make sure that they've got like an even spread of clients so that if one does have a bug, there's still enough validators online with other clients. So that's what they're trying to do at the moment. They've certainly got enough validators, but they don't have a very equal spread on which clients each of those validators are using. So I think that's probably one of the biggest issues I've seen, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not massive, but it's something they do need to improve on.
So I see a lot of Bitcoiner maxis who have been flooding this whole thing from the get-go. Say that ETH is now moving to an even more decentralized, easier to exploit proof of stake kind of thing. I know in the past that they mentioned, it's an ICO, and all that kind of FUD. But is this more centralized than having miners mine ETH to validate?
I mean, in both senses, you had the same problem, right? Here you've got the biggest issue is the client software that each one is using. If there's a bug, then it's, centralized because everyone's, running the same software. But it was the same when you had mining farms, like, you had different pools that were humongous and took tons of the, they provided tons of the hash rate for the Ethereum chain. So it is similar, but I mean, it's just FUD, in my opinion.
Excellent. Well, I love FUD. So, okay, let's say, I want to benefit from this whole merge thing, right? And I'm not telling you to speculate on price action because I know you're not stupid enough to do that here. But can I be a validator? Like, is that something that you see as beneficial? Because miners, if I wanted to mine ETH, in the past, buying a bunch of GPUs, I could have done that. So what's the play here?
Yeah, so it's definitely. I was going to say it's cheaper. It's not actually cheaper, but basically, if you were to take the most decentralized way of running a validator, you would take your 32 ETH, you would set up a node at home, which could just be or somewhere. You'd set a node up somewhere, and you would set up a validator through internet connection, and you could run the client, and you could benefit from roughly 4% as a validator, and then on top of that you get probably another sort of 4-ish%, which would be the tips that we send. When you send the transaction, you obviously the minor tips, those will now be given out to the validators, I believe. So you could end up with a decent return. You're not going to be running a power hungry GPU PC. You're going to be running something pretty low key. I think if you've got enough liquidity that you're looking to do that, then I think it's a good idea if you want to just bank some ETH somewhere and earn a return on it. It's probably safer than putting it on your highest APR DeFi chain somewhere, which could be hacked or something. I certainly would love to do it. I'm just trying to decide if I can lock up 32 ETH. When I say lock up as well, you're only, at the moment, you're unable to unstake, but there's going to be an update to the chain called the Shanghai update, which will be when they give you the ability to withdraw from the beacon chain. So I believe last time I read something about that, it was maybe like 2 or 3 months away from the merge. So it's not like you're locking it up forever. There will be a point when you can get that out, but the official date for that's not been announced yet. But I think it's a good idea, and even if you don't have the full 32, or even if you don't want to run your own node at home, there are other ways you can do it. There's just different pros and cons to each of them. So other ways you can do it is you could use a staking service where you would put your 32 in and someone would run your node for you, and you would basically trust that they'll keep the uptime of your node high so that you get the fees, and then you can take the fees out whenever you want. Quite often they just charge a monthly hosting cost. And other ways you can do it if you've got less ETH is you can go to larger exchanges like Coinbase or someone, and you can give them 5 ETH or 10 ETH, and you'll get that equivalent amount of profits, but I believe they'll probably shave off a lot of that, and you won't get your full miner tips, is my guess. Or not your miner tips, your validator tips, I suppose. So I've not read deeply into quite what their offering is in terms of returns, but I can imagine it will be very favourable to them, considering you're only putting up a certain amount. But it's another option.
Awesome. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So in terms of supply here, I mean, ETH is becoming deflationary with this move. Is that correct, or am I misunderstanding that?
Yeah. So now after the I forget, yeah, EIP 1559. That's when we started seeing ETH being burnt. So on a kind of rough estimate, the amount of ETH that gets burnt. Obviously, some days are worse than others. Like, other deeds, for example, that was a horrendous day for ETH getting burnt. But the amount of ETH that's being burnt on a daily basis is a lot higher than the amount that's going to be generated on a daily basis. So I read some kind of rough stats about this, and roughly kind of 7,500 ETH is being burnt per day through transaction fees, and then in a day it's going to be like 1,600 ETH. So there's a decent, it's very much in favour of ETH becoming more deflationary each day, which is going to be obviously quite good for ETH holders. But I guess we just have to wait and see quite how that all plays out, or how long that will take to show. But yeah, in terms of the value of your currency going up, it's only good, right? If there's less of it.
Right on. I guess my next question kind of comes into security. So how secure is the chain after all this?
Yeah, this one was interesting because I read a few places that Ethereum was going to become the most secure chain due to like economic security and 51% attack because of all the amount of validators and things. But there are other ways that ETH can suffer. One of which was that the client's having a bug, for example. These are different ways that it could be exploited. But yeah, I think the idea was that you needed $15 billion to basically affect ETH. And you needed like 10 billion to affect Bitcoin or something crazy like that, to be able to sort of own enough of the chain to launch an attack. But I mean, yeah, I don't. Those are such crazy numbers. I'm not entirely sure how how it all adds up. But yeah, there is a stat along those lines that it's going to be the most secure blockchain on Earth, but I don't think I fully get quite how that all goes together.
Right on. And I'm curious to know how much in Ethereum Vitalik has. I wonder if it is 15 billion or more. But that would be kind of crazy, but I guess that's kind of the fear, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know he's got a lot, but I don't know exactly how much. I actually think a lot of the other people that built it with him probably came away with a lot more. I don't know why I feel that, but I remember hearing something about Joe Lubin and a few other people in the beginning who did extremely well out of it, whereas Vitalik was a bit more generous in handing things out.
So one thing I remember, because I was a huge early investor in Matic early last year, and because I love Matic because I think one of the Ethereum's key things is adopting L2 solutions. It's always been a thing, even when 2.0 had been announced. Does that mean does ETH 2.0 mean that we no longer need scalability solutions? Like, what's the solution there? Is that something that is coming out in another update? Are we still relying on rollups and layer twos and side chains, things like that? Are those just going to become more and more important as we go on, or do you see a future where Ethereum solves the scalability solution issue right now?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be using rollups on mainnet in some of the future updates. And how that, I mean, I wonder how that will work for L2s, because their whole idea was they were kind of this side chain, but I think they can use them as well. So if they're using them and the mainnet's using them, I think there could still be a use case for it. I wouldn't say I'm completely sold on the use cases of L2 that we've seen so far. Like, I know, for example, Cool Cats launched their thing over there, and there was like even scaling issues. I've not dived too deep into how the future, like, you know, if Ethereum's at 100,000 transactions per second or per block or whatever it is, then obviously that sounds a lot to me. It's probably, I mean, I've got no idea what credit card companies are up to now, and what they can process. So I think there'll always be a need to have more transactions per second. Like, I know we talked about, or we saw the other day, like Starbucks, for example, doing their loyalty program. Depending on what each project needs, then there'll probably always be a need to have like an L2 or some kind of sidechain, which can then use like use roll-ups as well to then maybe bulk post back to the main chain. I just don't think we've really seen anything scale to the sizes that we can really see a massive need for these things yet. I want to see them. I want to see these projects come out which require crazy throughput, and I want to see how they do it. But I mean, I think on mainnet at the moment, you know, if we can see gas going down and we can see transactions per second going up, then that'll allow people to start exploring other areas now that they can do more with the chain. And it'll be interesting to see how all that pans out. But I just don't think we're there yet. I just don't think we've seen enough on L2s to really see that vision play out properly in our heads, like the need to have that crazy amount of throughput. I don't know about you guys, but certainly for me.
Yeah, not yet. I mean, I think that like the biggest was when, you know, we were in a bull and, you know, gas was ridiculous pricing. It was like, oh, this would be great if we had some L2s, and I think that kind of came the solution. But as of lately, I mean, it doesn't seem like anyone, like, gas has been that big of a problem at all lately.
Yeah, exactly, and gas hasn't been a big issue because not everyone's really been doing tons of stuff. Obviously, as we start seeing more happen, then if ETH scales, then everything might be okay for a while, and then at some point maybe that will get crazy again, and then there'll be a need to think about how we can branch off to other chains and then post back to mainnet and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just don't think we've seen it yet. So as we scale, we'll then maybe have to push it a bit further and work out exactly where the answers are. But I think once, like, you know, we've all been in NFTs for a while, and we've seen all the limitations and, you know, how much gas you have to throw at things and all that kind of stuff. So I think roll-ups will be really interesting. I think roll-ups will be good to sort of see how those are being used and how we can then push things further. But I don't think we've had the volume to be able to really decide exactly how we want to use each chain. I mean, we've seen like DeFi, for example, like DeFi on an L2 is so much nicer than DeFi on mainnet. Like being able to, you know, if you've not got tons of liquidity, being able to sort of still put some coins in a liquidity pool and do this and do that, and how cheap the transactions are to be able to pull that off, then that's really nice. We like that. But then that's got its own limitations, other stuff. So it'll be nice to see how it all plays out. I mean, obviously we've got to get through this merge first, so I think that'll be the first one to look out for before we see some of these future upgrades.
Excellent. Well, speaking of the future, I know I made a joke about the merge early on, sounding like a Stephen King novel, and you mentioned we'll just wait for the sequels, and you said Surge, Verge, Purge, and Splurge, and I thought, and I'm not kidding, I thought you were joking. I thought you just made that up. I thought that was a good Esren joke there, but that seems like that's the roadmap, right? Can you explain
that
a
is
little
the
bit
roadmap?
about?
Yeah. So the merge obviously is going to be the transition to proof of stake. We've got the surge, which is going to be scalability, and I think even that's got like 3 or 4 kind of milestones. I think the first one is going to be like trying to 10x it, and then all going well with everything, with different shards and different other roll-up types and everything else that people are researching at the moment. I think the idea is they want to try and get to like 100x, which will be obviously amazing, and that'll be done through, some of the stuff they've got is like increasing the size of the shards that they then use, staggering block times and all this kind of stuff, which is sort of very mad. I'm sure some people know it inside out, but I don't. And then the Verge is going to be, if you go on Vitalik's blog, you can like read into this stuff in a lot more detail. It'll probably make your head explode. But yeah, the Verge is going to be like, we know about Merkle trees at the moment. You've probably seen that. For example, when we have allow lists, for example, they use these Merkle trees, which give you the Merkle proof, which is a cheap way of basically you asking, is my wallet address on the allow list, right? And it's done through this concept of Merkle trees. They're pushing that a bit further with something called Verkle trees, which is part of the Verge. So that's, he's got a big blog post about what a Verkle tree is, if you want to dig into that. I've not yet. I just know it's part of that upgrade. And then there's another one called the Purge, which is going to be like eliminating historical data and clearing up some technical debt on the way that Ethereum works. And then some other upgrades with the Splurge. I think he's running out of names by then. But yeah, certainly a lot happening. I don't know if anyone follows Vitalik's blog, but it can be quite heavy going but quite interesting if you can get your head around some of the crazy concepts.
Yeah, Vitalik is packing a lot of knowledge in that blog.
Yeah, for sure. Packing it.
That was a double entendre. But anyway, well, great. The defense rests. That's all the questions that I think I have about the merge. But I know that I am not in the majority probably. So anyone out there want to quickly come on and ask a question real fast and see if we can get to the bottom of it? I know we've had about a 30-minute conversation here about it. So yeah, feel free to jump in if anyone's got a question.
Hey, I've got a couple questions. One is, what could go wrong in the merge and how will we see that happen? And then 2, will the merge increase speed of transactions, or will it just stay the same?
Yeah, the second one I'll take first. It's going to stay pretty much the same. So the upgrade, basically we've got the merge, then we've got the Shanghai upgrade, which is going to be to allow validators to withdraw, and then after that the next thing that they're going to look at is going to be the sharding and things to upgrade the transaction throughput, which will be when you start seeing the ability to push more through the chain in a quicker time, therefore gas will be lower. So that's when you'll start seeing that, but there's not really any kind of date for that yet. So in this one you will only see a small throughput increase because the block times are going to drop from 13 seconds to 12 seconds. So you can imagine, like, every 12 seconds there's a new block now instead of every 13. So that's not a massive. The block sizes are going to be the same, so you're not going to see a very decent difference. Like, you're not going to notice anything really. And in terms of what could go wrong, God, I don't really know. I know they've tested this so thoroughly. We were having a chat about this so earlier, and they have literally upgraded and tested this for ages. Like, this is them on their final part now, where they're going to obviously do it to the main chain, but they have tested this so well that I would be surprised if we have an issue, to be honest. And I know lots of other players who could affect things are in like big support of this. Like, I know Flash bots, for example, have said that they're not going to function on the chain for like 3 hours till 3 hours after the merge, for example. So everyone's kind of standing back and just letting this go through before they're switching on all the other things that we're used to using. So yeah, I see it going well. I think the most interesting part will be the aftermath. So you're going to have, you're going to be able to, you're going to have your NFTs duplicated on two chains, probably the proof of work chain and then the main chain. And the price of the proof of work ETH, if that's any good. But I don't really care too much about what's going to happen on that chain, because to me it just looks like the miners just holding on for dear life. I mean, have any of you ever connected to the Ethereum Classic chain? I'd be surprised.
Awesome. Well, I got a question here from EQ Poppy. And he says, and then I feel like we've kind of brushed on this, but also maybe we didn't, we downplayed it a little bit, but he says, this may sound like a dumb as fuck question, but it doesn't, don't worry. Does the merge affect our current ETH? Like, will I have to, swap for the new version? Just like when we released the new token for, MVHQ, we had to go do a manual process. Will we have to do some kind of manual process here?
No, there's so much scammy things around. You have to do nothing. The only things I would say are worth doing is to, if you've got any ETH in an exchange, to remove it before midnight UTC. Because that's when a lot of the exchanges are looking to block withdrawals. So I would recommend, if anyone's got any ETH in an exchange, that they just make sure they're in custody of that ETH with their own keys and MetaMask or something. And again, from what I've seen, different exchanges are saying that that's happening at midnight tonight. So worth having a think about that if you've got stuff sitting on exchanges. But in terms of you waking up on the 16th and having to scramble to get your ETH token, absolutely not. You have to do nothing. So you will be on the same chain ID that you've always used. In your MetaMask RPC, for example, ETH will still be ETH. Everything will be fine. The only thing that will be different is there'll be people probably speculating and talking about all the different things that are being done on this proof of work chain. I think that's probably the only interesting side of this, but you can choose to have a look at that, or you can choose to just ignore it completely. And a lot of people will just ignore that. Certainly a lot of exchanges are going to ignore it. They've already said that the ticker for the token that you're all used to using on the chain ID 1, the mainnet chain, is still going to be ETH. So do not fall for any scams about upgrading your tokens. Do not, just do nothing. And I know, for example, in Fura, someone created a very real-looking Infura email and started sending a message out to everyone, making it look like they needed to go and upgrade their token. So just beware of all that stuff. You have to do nothing.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that you have to send your ETH to RyanH.eth to get it validated, and then he'll return it in like 7 to 8 weeks, something like that. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, good to know.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions for the crowd here?
Yeah, I have one. I was wondering, when the merge happens and these old NFTs on the old chain, how do we accept offers on that chain versus accepting offers on the new chain?
So I think they're basically in MetaMask the same way as you would have had PC for Polygon or something. At some point there will be another chain ID that is the one that is currently, it would be adopted as the proof of work chain that everyone's going to care about, if they do care about it. And so at some point there'll be the ability to have a look at that, and then you could see, this is interesting because I'm guessing you would have to connect to something like OpenSea. So this is what I mean about it's going to be interesting. I don't know if anyone else has got a good input on that. Like, please jump in, because I know it would be like connecting to a different chain, but
so, I can give some context there.
Yeah,
in and out of this. So, like the OpenSea contracts, all of that, it's still, if they fork the chain, it's gonna be there. But like OpenSea's not supporting it, so some stuff that is permissionless, that you can operate with a contract, so people can build different front ends, and technically someone could make a broken C that works on POW. That's feasible. Some platforms, like the controversy with Magic Eden, is they now need a signature from their API. So if there was ever a fork there, they choose which version would work. Most of ETH's exchanges are permissionless, and people could make another front end. But if they did, in OpenSea's case, 2.5% would be going to a black hole, so people would probably be more motivated to make their own markets that they get that 2.5% on.
Yeah, that's good points. Yeah, for sure. So we'll need to see. I mean, this is all the stuff that will start popping up.
Exactly as you said, though, it would be switching networks, and it would be like, it's the exact same experience you'd have if you were trying to use a Binance Smart Chain NFT marketplace. Like, just for comparison's sake, because I don't think there's too many that are ETH, Binance, both compatible. So it would be like going and doing that.
Look for Ryder Rips and Poly to be creating something where you can do this. That's where my mind goes to. People like that.
If I can just bring one last thought on this matter, one that I didn't see raised is, to be honest, people are just going to fork, or people are just going to bridge them to mainnet ETH, and they'll have way more money and liquidity there. So you're going to have like ETH POW punks on ETH mainnet.
Oh god,
that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, for sure. That's gonna be a mess.
Which is kind of why. Sorry. Kind of why places
please.
Only their version on mainnet. If you fork the other cloned one over to mainnet, you don't get Yacht Club privileges, or whether it's on whatever chain it's on, it's just their original version.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's a really good. It's good that they're all thinking about this, because you're not going to be able to fork over a Bored Ape and expect to get anything out of it, or even buy one on the proof of work chain and expect to get anything out of it. It's just pointless. What was I going to say? I had a thought there. I've forgotten it. Yeah, I don't know.
Excellent. Well, does anyone else have any other questions? I know we're running on 40 minutes here, but we're here for you guys. So between the breadth of knowledge of people that have been talking. Here's a great one. Crypto Aqua asked, what made it take so long to implement the merge? Like, it's been a long time coming. I mean, the whole ETH 2.0 dance that Vitalik and all those people did with the wrap was like, it was like 2000, like that was a while ago, right? So what's taking it so long?
I think, I mean, it's a massive undertaking. Like, if you think about it, they needed to have this beacon chain that allowed you to create validators. They needed to get the whole validator algorithm working properly. Once you had that all working properly, you then had to think about how the mainnet chain is going to use that to then build blocks. And so it's a huge architecture piece of work that spans different areas. And to get all that done and working on a chain that is running at the moment, they then had to think about how they were then going to upgrade that chain. And I'm sure there's a million other things in between, but that was kind of probably the highest level that I certainly look at it as. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty complicated, especially for something that's decentralized. Like, if you imagine a website doing a website overhaul, they can do the whole overhaul and run it on like a beta domain for years until they're happy, and then they just click a button and it's the next person that goes to that website sees that new updated site. You can't really do that here. Everyone's running these nodes everywhere, and there's so much preparation that needs to be done. So they had to, for example, they needed a certain amount of validators before they could even consider proof of stake. So they needed to obviously get everyone on board there and told them you can't actually get any of this money out yet. So that's massive. Then once they hit that kind of benchmark, then they could move on to the next bits and the next bits and the next bits. And to try and undertake that with a fully remote team and all the testing that needs to be done. I think the testing was a massive part. I mean, for anyone that was here slightly before, Sola was talking about it. Like, they went through so much testing on this to basically try and work out where all the problems were. And I think now we've finally landed at a point where they're ready to do it. But it's a humongous upgrade.
Awesome. We'll still take some more questions if you have them. So feel free to ask a question, but we'll also take them here in the chat. And if not, we can wrap it up. But this will all be recorded too, so think of that. So if you want to look back to it, or you kind of came here at the end, you'll be able to listen to this later on. Crypto Aqua just asked real quick. The question about L2s and bridges, could there be some risks there after the merge?
Yeah, so I mean, all these bridges they shouldn't have to really do anything once the merge is complete. I would certainly not. Each bridge should probably shut down at some point around when the merge is going to happen to avoid any issues, but these bridges should seamlessly work. But I would certainly avoid doing too much on bridges too close or very close to the merge date. There's a website that you can actually follow along exactly, because the time that the merge will happen is actually, it changes, and it changes. I've just posted the link there, which is the website I've been using. And so basically what's happened is they decided on a difficulty, and so each block that gets created, the difficulty for the miners to solve that block is getting more and more complex. So they decided on a difficulty that they're going to wait for and that's when they're then going to run the merge upgrade. So that difficulty is changing, so we can basically see roughly when we're expected to see ETH difficulty for the blocks to hit that point, and that's that's what they've decided upon as the way. But obviously, as hash rate changes and stuff, there's a lot of variables there, so you can kind of see a rough estimate. But that's why it's not kind of like, Thursday at 3 p.m. They can't really do it like that. They've done it based on the difficulty, and they did a vote on this on one of the calls that they had, and this is the one they've decided upon. So yeah, keep an eye on this site if you want to get an exact idea of when this is going to happen, and that's when we can all expect to see this craziness occur.
Excellent. Right on. Any other questions, guys? Any questions for me about fantasy sports? I'm just kidding now. Awesome. Well, I'm not going to try to force people to ask questions if they don't have any. Again, we went through a lot here today. So, Esren, is there anything else that maybe you want to emphasize or kind of talk about the way we didn't could talk about? But if not, we just go ahead and wrap it up.
Just everyone be careful. Like, don't wake up and read that you're meant to add in your RPC to your MetaMask to get access to something. Like, just you have to do nothing if you want to continue the way you're continuing. The only time you would ever want to add a new RPC is to do something differently. You don't have to upgrade anything, you don't have to do anything at all, so don't fall for any scams. We might not have seen them yet. There'll probably be a lot of new things kicking around on the kind of time between now and then, and probably after. So just be very careful. You're not doing anything stupid.
My wife was an advisor for a sorority in college, and she always said, don't be be a lady, remember who you belong to, and don't be stupid. Okay, so
there you go.
Be a degen, remember who you belong to, and don't be stupid here. Okay, guys, that's how we'll wrap this up. But Esren, thank you so much for the wealth of knowledge. Sola, I really appreciate your input there too. You're an absolute gem to this community, both of you. So thank you so much for speaking with us today, and thanks everyone for listening live and listening later on. We love you guys, and we are so glad to make this community a better place by doing things like this. So everyone, just have a great day, and